Building on the previous NHTSA study, the researchers interviewed officers from across the United States and developed a list of driving cues that had been found to predict blood alcohol concentrations, or BACs, of 0.08 or greater. The list was developed during 2 field studies involving hundreds of officers and more than 5,000 enforcement stops. The driving behaviors identified by the officers are presented in the following 4 categories: problems in maintaining proper lane position, speed and braking problems, vigilance problems, and judgment problems. The cues presented in these categories predict that a driver is DWI between 35 to 90% of the time. The research showed the probability of drivers being DWI increased substantially if they exhibited more than one of these cues. The cues of impairment depicted in this video apply to the 0.08 BAC level and above. Also, the probability of DWI increases if the driver exhibits more than one cue. Maintaining proper lane position can be a difficult task for an impaired driver. For example, we've all seen vehicles weaving before. Weaving is when the vehicle alternately moves toward one side of the lane and then the other. Drifting is when a vehicle fails to maintain its position in the lane, moving either toward the lane line or toward the curb. The driver might correct the vehicle's course as it approaches a lane line or other boundary, or once they have drifted over the boundary line. In extreme cases, the driver fails to correct in time to avoid a collision. Course corrections can be gradual or abrupt. A related DWI cue is almost striking a vehicle or other object. You might observe a vehicle either at slow speed or moving with traffic, to pass unusually close to a sign, barrier, building, or other object. This cue also includes almost striking another vehicle, either moving or parked, causing another vehicle to maneuver to avoid a collision, turning with a wide radius, or drifting during a curve. Another cue of impaired driving is when the vehicle appears to drift to the outside of the lane or onto another lane through a curve or while turning a corner. Many alcohol-involved crashes are caused by an expanding turn radius or drifting out of lane position during a curve. The research showed that braking properly can be a difficult task for an impaired driver. For example, there's a good chance a driver is DWI if you observe problems with stopping or braking. Stopping problems include stopping too far from a curb or at an inappropriate angle, stopping too short, stopping beyond the limit line, and jerky or abrupt stops. Impaired drivers can also experience difficulty maintaining an appropriate speed. There's a good chance a driver is DWI if you observe a vehicle accelerate or decelerate for no apparent reason, or if you observe a vehicle to vary its speed, alternating between speeding up and slowing down, or you observe a vehicle being driven at a speed that is 10 miles per hour or more under the limit. Vigilance concerns a person's ability to pay attention to a task or notice changes in surroundings. A driver whose vigilance is impaired by alcohol might forget to turn his or her headlights on when required. Also, impaired drivers often forget to signal a turn, or their signal is often inconsistent with their maneuver. Here, the driver signals left but turns right. Alcohol-impaired vigilance also results in motorists driving into opposing or crossing traffic, or turning in front of oncoming vehicles with insufficient headway. Driving is a complex task that requires continuous assessment and responses to surrounding traffic conditions. Failing to yield the right-of-way and turning the wrong way on a one-way street are dangerous examples of vigilance problems. A driver whose vigilance is impaired by alcohol might also respond more slowly than normal to a change in a traffic signal. For example, the vehicle might remain stopped for an unusually long period of time after the signal was turned green. An impaired driver might be unusually slow to respond to an officer's lights, sirens, or hand signals. Another DWI cue in the category of vigilance problems is to find a vehicle stopped in the lane for no reason. Sometimes when you observe this behavior, the driver will be lost or confused, but this is also an indicator of an impaired driver, who may even be asleep at the wheel. Operating a motor vehicle requires continuous decision-making by the driver. Judgment can be affected by even small amounts of alcohol. For example, impaired judgment can cause a driver to follow another vehicle too closely, providing an unsafe stopping distance. Alcohol-impaired judgment can also result in a driver taking risks or endangering others. If you observe a vehicle to make improper or unsafe lane changes frequently or abruptly, or with disregard for other vehicles, there's a good chance the driver's judgment has been impaired by alcohol. Impaired judgment can also cause a driver to turn improperly. For example, impaired judgment about speed in the roadway can cause a driver to take a turn too fast or to make certain corrections during the maneuver. These corrections can appear as jerky or sharp vehicle movements during the turn. Alcohol-impaired judgment can affect the full range of driver behaviors. For example, the research found that impaired drivers are less inhibited about making illegal turns than non-impaired drivers. Driving on other than the designated roadway is another cue exhibited by alcohol-impaired drivers. Examples include driving at the edge of the roadway, on the shoulder, off the roadway entirely, and straight through turn lanes. In some cases, impaired drivers stop inappropriately in response to an officer, either abruptly as if they had been startled or in an illegal or dangerous manner. In fact, the research has shown that there is a good chance the driver is DWI if you observe the person to exhibit any inappropriate or unusual behavior.
Stop because you're wobbling all over the road on your bike here. Is everything okay today?
Nah, I'm okay. All right.
Okay, have you had anything to drink at all today?
No, I haven't.
Unusual behavior includes throwing something from the vehicle, drinking in the vehicle, urinating at roadside, arguing with another motorist, or otherwise being disorderly.
Hey, it's a stop sign, not a parking lot.
The final cue relates to the personal behavior or appearance of a driver. Some expert officers routinely scrutinize the faces of oncoming traffic, looking for indicators of impairment. If you observe a driver who appears to be impaired, the research shows that there is an excellent probability that you are correct in your judgment. To summarize, the DWI cues related to problems in maintaining proper lane position include weaving, weaving across lane lines, straddling lane lines, drifting, swerving, almost striking a vehicle or other object, turning with a wide radius, or drifting during a curve. The DWI cues related to speed and braking problems include stopping problems, stopping too far, stopping too short, too jerky, accelerating for no reason, varying speed, and driving too slowly. The DWI cues related to vigilance problems include driving without headlights at night, failure to signal a turn or lane change or signal inconsistent with action, driving in opposing lanes or the wrong way on a one-way street, slow response to traffic signals, slow or failure to respond to officer signals, and stopping in the lane for no apparent reason. The DWI cues related to judgment problems include following too closely, improper or unsafe lane change, illegal or improper turns such as too fast, jerky, or too sharp, driving on other than the designated roadway, stopping inappropriately in response to an officer, inappropriate or unusual behavior, and appearing to be impaired. In addition to the driving cues, the following post-stop cues have been found to be reliable indicators of DWI. Difficulty with motor vehicle controls, fumbling with the driver's license or registration, difficulty exiting the vehicle, repeats questions or comments, swaying, unsteady or balance problems, leaning on the vehicle or other object, slurred speech, slow to respond to an officer, requires the officer to repeat questions, and provides incorrect information, answers, or an inconsistent story.